Welcome to Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Development. Listen, I'm here to talk to you about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Really, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on such platforms as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, and many more. You can even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So it's really everything that you need to make a podcast and more, or in one place, So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.
So I would encourage school leaders who are listening right now, focus on the mental well-being and health of your teachers, your students, your parents. You're doing triage work right now, but pay close attention to what this period has revealed. Did you witness more student compassion or less student compassion? Did you witness more collaboration among your teachers or less? Tragedy reveals really what you are. It's not a time to build who it reveals who you are.
Greetings, leaders. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Is Podcast, episode 42, with our special guest, Dr. Anthony Muhammad. Today, we're talking about the Educational Leadership Challenge, COVID-19 and school growth. The impact of COVID-19 has been huge in schools across the nation, but the question is, how does educational leadership respond during this time of crisis? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Leadership Is Podcast, the Educational Leadership Challenge, COVID-19, and School Growth, with our special guest, Dr. Anthony Muhammad. Dr. Anthony Muhammad is one of the most sought-after educational consultants in North America. He currently serves as the CEO of New Frontier 21 Consulting, a company dedicated to providing cutting-edge professional development to schools all over the world. Dr. Muhammad is recognized as one of the field's leading experts in the areas of school culture and organizational climate. His work has allowed him to work with schools in all 50 states, also in Canada, the Caribbean, South America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. He is also the best-selling author of books such as The Will to Lead and The Skill to Teach, Transforming Schools at Every Level, Transforming School Culture, How to Overcome Staff Division, A Time for a Change, and many more. Please welcome Dr. Anthony Muhammad to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm excited to be able to share with you and your listeners.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. I have followed you, man, for quite a while and have looked at some of the dynamic work that you've done, with some of your talks and definitely some of your books. I was working as a dean of students in a progressive middle school in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You may have heard of it, the Best Academy. And there with Eric Mahmoud. And so someone brought me your book, and he was actually the assistant principal. And he and I used to dissect your book all the time, the one about transforming culture and dealing with staff differences, and so definitely I'm familiar with your work. So besides all of that mouthful that I just said, tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, who I am and what I do, are different. I am a proud native of Flint, Michigan, and grew up in the great city of Flint and attended Michigan State University, and proud father of 6 children and a lovely wife. Proud Muslim. I spent 8 years as a teacher. I taught middle school social studies, and I spent 11 years as an administrator, 2 as an assistant and 9 as a principal. While serving as a principal, I had the pleasure to lead a school that was considered a dropout factory. And we became a national blue ribbon school. And consequently, in 2005, I was named the State of Michigan Principal of the Year. Started consulting full-time around 2007. because the scope of the work had expanded, and other people were wondering, okay, if you could do it there, how can it happen? Where I ran into your colleague in Minnesota, because it's taken me all over the world.
Yes,
And
sir.
since then, I've formed my own company. I've had the pleasure now to write 8 books.
Mm.
The 8th will be published in April of this year, which is the 3rd edition of the classic Professional Learning Communities book. And just had an opportunity to watch the field grow and evolve and tackle challenges, and while at the same time maintaining my responsibility as a husband and as a father and as a citizen. So it's been a charmed life. I don't have a whole lot to complain about.
Absolutely. Sounds like it. Now, as you said about Flint, Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
with the water crisis that's there, also with this, COVID-19 thing. So how has, all of that affected your scope of work?
Well, just one, I want to just, I live outside of Detroit now. Flint's
Okay.
my hometown, but I just hate, I don't, you know, the notion that when you say Flint, people automatically think of water.
Yeah.
Flint,
Yeah.
Flint is the birthplace of General Motors. It's an iconic American city.
Yes, sir.
And I grew up there during the height of the industrial boom. But unfortunately, like any city, if you rip 90% of its economy out, it's going to fall on hard times. When I
Mm.
grew up, there's about 250,000 people. Now there's about 80,000. You do the math. If people can't work and eat, then they move.
Right.
Um, but so, but COVID has affected everyone.
Yes,
Whether you
sir.
live in the Hollywood Hills, or you live in Michigan, or you live in the Appalachians in West Virginia, or on Jersey Shore, it's affected everybody. It's been an equal
That's right.
opportunity disruptor. Um,
That's
and
right.
one of the blessings is that when you lay the groundwork and you develop a reputation and you're ethical and people find what you share is useful, then the need is still there. And I'm just as busy during the pandemic as I was before the pandemic, but about 90% of my work has gone virtual.
Yes,
So I've
sir.
had to develop a new skill set, which is the ability, because the learning is the same. I mean, the objectives are the same. The platform has changed. And now I have to try to simulate the type of experiences that I would give people face to face through a virtual training, which requires,
Right.
you know, set, the use of recorded video, the use of breakout rooms and virtual activities, because the goal is the same. I'm not trying to, um, uh, you know, really produce a different lane. It's just a new avenue to the same lane. So when the dust settles, I'm really looking forward to the fact that I've created a new avenue for my company and work, that I'll be able to still do both once the pandemic is over. Because the demand has been the same. It's a little cheaper. I don't charge as much when I don't have to travel, but the profit margins are about the same. So it's giving me
Yes,
a
sir.
chance to be at home more, and road 200 days a year, and be here for a lot of the experiences at home, but still continue to push um, the ideologies and the messages of my work. Um, but I still am looking forward to, when it's safe, the opportunity to engage with face to face too.
Yes,
Teacher,
sir.
people carry energy, and it's difficult to gauge energy through a virtual platform. You have to be very disciplined, but just the natural flow of energy that comes from a live audience, that's what I miss. So, God willing, when this is over, I will have expanded my business, still people that want that face-to-face experience, but then people, especially in like rural areas, I don't have to, some places you go and it's, place and it's 2-hour drive. This virtual platform has opened it up that they could get services, but I don't have to
Right.
stress myself and strain myself with really tumultuous travel. Um,
Right.
and it's opened up new markets. And I'm working with districts. I had an issue in Canada, with a work permit, and I kind of got in an argument with the border, and they put me on like a ban list. I've been doing a whole lot of business in Canada. They can't ban me over the airways. Um, they put me on I can get in, but they take me through this line of questioning once you have an incident with a border agent.
Yeah.
So now I'm working with schools in Canada again. So it's been a good thing from a business
Good.
standpoint. Now, obviously not from a health standpoint. We
Right.
lost almost 500,000 people, but from a business standpoint, it's forced me into innovating.
Yes, sir. And see, Dr. Anthony, one of the things that I teach is the 3 mindsets of next generation leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 mindsets are adapt, innovate, and connect. And what you just told me right now, you have actually demonstrated all 3 of those next generation mindsets because, again, the change that took place, as you called it, an equal opportunity disruptor,
Mm-hmm.
This COVID-19 definitely has caused some of us to have to adapt, and then from that adaptation, then there's the innovation,
Mm-hmm.
And then from that innovation, you got to connect with the people, right, in order for you to keep your level of service and your KPIs and your mission statements and core values alive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a wonderful example what you just gave there with how you're continuously keeping your service to the people going, even though some physical conditions have changed.
And you have to. You become irrelevant.
Yeah. Great perspective, sir. So tell me something. What is your definition of leadership?
A John Maxwell-esque kind of definition with a twist. John Maxwell describes leadership as influence. I like to I think it's a little bit more complex than that. Leadership is about increasing productivity. And Maxwell's statement is more that influence, it's kind of assumed, but my premise is the only reason that a person, because a person doesn't have to follow you. It's a choice. They don't have to. They make a choice to follow somebody. And the only logical reason that a person will follow somebody else, let them lead them, is that by being led by that person or group of people, I become better off. So leadership is about a value add. It's not about charisma or authority. It's about, are people better off because of your presence? And if they're not, then you're really not leading. You really just, you're exhibiting authority. But if people are better off because of your presence, then they don't need to be coerced. They don't need to be oppressed. They don't need to be cajoled. They'll follow you because they see a benefit in doing so. So,
yes, sir.
Which breaks down into some complex things. And you have to kind of understand what people need and be able to serve them in a way that meets their needs, but also help them raise expectations for themselves even when they don't want to. Because it's really, when you break it down simply, I can't be a good reading teacher if kids aren't reading better because of my instruction. What justifies me is that students are going to read better because of my influence. We see it in sports. If I become the new coach of the Pistons and they're not doing any better, and after giving me an opportunity to use my influence, then I lose my utility. So any leader that considers himself a leader, are people getting better? Are the indicators that things are more productive, that things are more robust because of your presence? And if things are just stagnant, you're not a leader, you're a manager. Managers kind of walk on pins and needles, hoping not to mess things up. Just keep things the status quo. It's not a leader. And obviously, if your organization regresses, you've given moral authority to lead. So what justifies a leader or leadership is that people are better off because of your presence.
Yeah, that's excellent, man. That is excellent. So, one of the things that I say at the end of the podcast is, leadership is influence and service. And that's what I believe it is. So, yeah, again, as you say, John Maxwell-esque, but with an addition to it, or with a little twist to it. So that's excellent, sir. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So tell me something, Dr. Anthony. How can school leadership adapt, innovate, and connect solutions, to students, or for students and parents and stakeholders in terms of school growth during this pandemic?
Okay. Well, I want to address emergencies. I've done a lot of research in the area of emergency or tragedy-laced leadership. And the research on that is pretty clear. They're doing a tragedy or an emergency. Organizations don't make progress. At best, they maintain status quo. An emergency is not a time to really innovate or express a vision. You hold on during an emergency. An example I like to use is that if I can't swim and you drop me off in the middle of a lake, that's not the time to learn how to swim. That's going to reveal whether I can swim or not. And if I'm fortunate enough, I tread water to the edge of the lake, I need to learn from that experience. So I would encourage school leaders who are listening right now, focus on the mental well-being and health of your teachers, your students, your parents. You're doing triage work right now, but pay close attention to what this period has revealed. Did you witness more student compassion or less student compassion? Did you witness more collaboration among your teachers or less? Tragedy reveals really what you are. It's not a time to build who, it reveals who you are. So if I can't swim, it revealed the fact that I couldn't swim. I could hide it when it wasn't a tragedy, but you can't hide during a tragedy. So all the research on leadership during a tragedy, almost like 9/11, and this is where, Donald Trump failed, is to help people feel stable during a tragedy and help them get through the tragedy, but then learn the lesson during that tragedy about where you may need to improve, because a lot is going to be revealed. So what I'm finding is that during this period of time, a lot of covert bias and counterproductive ideologies have been revealed that need to be addressed. We always knew they were there, but people could hide them if it wasn't overt. But all you have to do is go to Twitter and follow a thread of educators. You hear more vitriol about parents now than you've ever heard. Hear more vitriol about these kids are so low, they don't care, they won't log in. People being frustrated about the needs of their clientele. We always knew it existed. But if you're a leader and you're listening, this pandemic pulled the cover off of it. And you're seeing it for what it really is. That we say in our society, particularly in education, that we're egalitarian and we truly care about every student's development. And we're seeing that when people are stressed and frustrated, some of their truest feelings are coming out. Now, when we get safely to shore, don't wink at that and put a cover back over it. You just have permission now to engage your people in some deep, crucial conversations. And it helps explain why we have this stagnant achievement gap. It explains disparities we see in opportunities. It explains disparities that we see in achievement and growth because of damaging mindsets. This pandemic is revealing that. So this may not be the right time to confront it because people are just treading water. But once this is over, there's a whole lot of hypocrisy we got to talk about.
Wow.
So I would tell those leaders who are listening, don't rush to create whole new systems during a pandemic, because it's going to be over. Some of the social norms will go back, but take note of what you're seeing during an emergency, so that as you go back to the kind of a new normal, you'll take advantage of what this pandemic has revealed and you'll grow from it. If you say, I'm glad this is over, and you ignore all the ugly things you saw come out, the fact that you'd ignored it is almost giving it permission. Take note of what's working well and what's not working well so you can offer different pathways, because some students who have been bullied, didn't feel seen at school, they may choose this virtual platform. And if you don't want to lose your students to charters who do all virtual or others, you're going to have to find pathways to engage students on multiple platforms, face-to-face as well as virtual. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, and that's excellent because I've done some research as well and looked at, how the companies, organizations have gone to the virtual platform and how, amazingly, how it has increased, how it has increased workplace
Mm-hmm.
culture. So, do you think that this whole pandemic is, how is it affecting? I know we're kind of going off script here a little bit, but again, you raise such or you give such deep thought, deep provoking, thought provoking answers. So how does this whole thing affect school culture?
Well,
Overall.
it's revealing school culture. What the things that were being hidden just kind of coming to the forefront. But
Yeah.
students they have a social need that's different than an accountant or a government worker. So the development of school culture, the clientele that they serve in a lot of the business, private sector, those are adults and adults. School culture is missing the component of the face-to-face, person-to-person connection with students, which show that teacher-student relationship is one of the greatest predictors of student success. So I don't see virtual learning or distance long-term as a good solution. I see it as a good option, but schools by nature are social and they become potent when they're social. That's why before the pandemic, nobody ever thought to make public schools around the world virtual, because we're creatures of we're social creatures. So I don't see
Right.
this like Ford would see it or IBM, because schools are profoundly different. I do believe we have to maintain a virtual option for those students who tended to thrive under this system if public schools want to retain kids. But long term, schools work best with human to human connection and producing that warm, social, professional, and learning environment.
Yes, sir. Great. So, do you have any closing comments, Dr. Anthony, as it relates to, in anything? Do you have any closing comments, and give your contact info as well? And how can people support your
Sure.
efforts?
My closing argument or message would be is that this is a very troubled but exciting time at the same time. With so much political turmoil, economic, social, gender, people are tired of being marginalized, and they want to be seen.
Yeah.
They want to be heard. Nobody wants to be discriminated against because of my sex or my skin color or how much money I'm. We're seeing even people are fighting back against Wall Street. We're ganging up on hedge funds. This is the time that America has to live up to her creed or be relegated to a second tier nation. The terms conversations, and I mean, they can placate people with Black Lives Matter emails and, letting them wear a message on their basketball jersey. People aren't buying that stuff anymore. They're tired of being placated and patronized. And if you truly believe that all men and women are created equally and that they're endowed by their creator with certain rights, this is the time for that to come into fruition. And you get a chance to see some of that in your lifetime. If you're a person who's engaged in what I call, in my book, Overcoming the Achievement Gap Trap, functional hypocrisy, the comfort between saying one thing but actually behaving in a different way, to talk about learning for all students, and we want those are all nice ideas that most people don't like living up to. Because if you fight equality, then somebody has to give up privilege. Somebody has to give up an advantage. So
Yes, sir.
America and most of the developed world has backed themselves into a corner where people are expecting them to live up to their stated creed. Upheaval, we're seeing unrest. I think we're on the precipice of something great if you want to live in that kind of world. If you don't, you're a dying breed. And I would encourage those in leadership to be on the right side of history when the dust settles.
Greetings, leaders. Thank you so much for enjoying another episode of Leadership Is Podcast with our special guest, Dr. Anthony Muhammad, CEO of Frontier 21 Consulting. We discussed today as far as the COVID-19 and school growth. And one of the things he talked about with this COVID-19, as it is a tragedy, he called it actually the equal opportunity disruptor. And with this equal opportunity disruptor, which is better known as a tragedy, right? He stated that tragedies reveal who you are. Tragedies reveal who you are. It's how you accommodate, it's how you respond during a tragedy, which really reveals who you are. And he was saying that once this tragedy is over, once this pandemic is over, don't just wink at, what was revealed to you and then just sweep it under the rug. He says, but it's really an opportunity for you to deal with what you see as a leader. And so I think that was an excellent perspective for not only school leadership, but all leadership. So thank you so much, Dr. Anthony Muhammad, for that. Also, JM Leadership Development's primary goal is to develop next generation leaders to leave the bench, embrace the growth mindset towards leadership, and step up to the plate. If you would like for us to do virtual assessment trainings or presentations for your hidden leaders or keynote your next event, contact us for a free half-hour conversation at info@jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Visit our website, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, or call us at 828-333-7234, and we will respond promptly. Please subscribe to this podcast using Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts using Jason A. Muhammad /leadershipis. Please follow us on social media. Twitter is @LeadershipJM. Facebook and Instagram is JM Leadership Development. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.
Are you promoting the right people into leadership positions? How do you know? How do you measure the outcomes, and are they the outcomes you're looking for? Please visit www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com. Again, www.jmleadershipdevelopment.com, and request a half-hour conversation to assess if we can address your leadership development needs. Oh, and by the way, always remember that leadership is influence and service.